On today's episode of Hello Road, I'm bored and at home and on my computer, which can only mean one thing. I'm browsing for rad 80s and 90s cars that I want to buy. Let's go! Montage time. Hey everybody, Ethan here. Welcome to Hello Road. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of the cars from the 80s and 90s, especially forgotten and unloved cars from that era. I've got a few of them myself, and I often like to take these cars on road trips and adventures. Now, if you know me, I'm not one for expensive cars. I like most Radwood era vehicles, but for me, they need to be a good value too, so I'll try to keep that in mind when I'm doing my search. Also, I tend to like weird stuff. Most of my choices in this video won't be collectible or valuable or even desirable, and maybe not even available. And that means many of these vehicles on this list might be pretty tough to find, but I'm always up for a challenge, so let's see what we can come up with. Okay, so fire up Craigslist, Auto Tempest, Facebook Marketplace, and OfferUp in your web browser tabs, and let's get searching. Let's start with a car that's been on my wish list for years. The Subaru XT. Just look at this wedge-shaped wonder. The XT, also known as the Alcyone in Japan, and the Vortex in Australia and New Zealand, was Subaru's first ever coupe. It was built between 1985 and 1991. This car is just dripping with weird 1980s styling. An extremely aerodynamic wedge-shaped body, pop-up headlights, and a heck blend adorning the boxy rear end. This was different than anything that was offered at the time. Plus, check out this super weird interior. Just look at that asymmetrical steering wheel and the pods to the left and right of it. I love it. Earlier models had a 97 horsepower, 1.7 liter Boxer 4, or a 112 horsepower turbocharged version of the same motor. In '88, the turbo was dropped in favor of a 145 horsepower H6 engine in the XT6. Let's see if we can find an XT for sale. Let's start with Auto Tempest, see if we can come up with anything. Okay, so that's not surprising. There's nothing here. Why don't we try Craigslist all the way through the United States and see what we can find here. Nothing. So not surprising, this car is kind of hard to find. Not doing so well with my first choice here. If you know of one for sale, post it up in the comments. I want to buy it.
Introducing the 1988 Nissan PULSAR NX.
This is the Nissan PULSAR NX Sportback, also known as the EXA in other markets. This car, built between 1986 and 1990, was made back in a time when manufacturers weren't afraid to try something really weird. Look at this thing, it's modular. Want a shooting brake? Easy. Take off the rear hatch and drop in the optional wagon back. Want a coupe? Great. Drop the hatch back on. Want an open air experience? Take off the roof. Need to cart around some large items in the back? Leave off the hatch and now you've got a mini pickup truck bed. Let's try to find one. Nothing. Not surprising. Let's check Craigslist. Okay, here's one for sale. $1,300. Looks pretty rad. This one does not have the Sportback option though. Oh, does not run. Engine block is cracked. Okay, so there's at least one for sale. Maybe this isn't the one to buy considering it's got a cracked engine block, but it is red and it's named Roxanne. That's worth something, right? Ooh, here we go. All right, this one's $1,200. It's a baby blue color. Doesn't come with a Sportback, but only 136,000 miles. Let's check out the next one over here. This one is red. It's got some aftermarket wheels on it, 153,000 miles. Oh man, that looks so cool. Pop-up headlights. But you know me, I'm all about cheap, so I'd probably go for this one right here. Well, none of these have the optional Sportback, which I'm sure is incredibly hard to find nowadays. Have you ever owned one of these weird cars? Let me know in the comments below.
And this is Mustang SVO. Have you driven a Ford lately?
Let's talk about one of the original turbo Mustangs. 3 decades before the EcoBoost Mustang was the Fox body Mustang SVO. Mustang sales suffered due to the oil crisis in the late 1970s, and Ford wanted to rethink the muscle car to better compete with the influx of Japanese and European sports car offerings in the US. The result? The Mustang SVO. While the Mustang GT was powered by a big old 302 cubic inch V8, the SVO was motivated by a 2.3 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It made 175 horsepower in 1984, 205 in 1985, and back down to 200 in 1986. Not only were these cars unique, they were actually quicker than their GT siblings. 0 to 60 in 7.7 seconds versus about 9 seconds for the GT. 7.7 seconds was pretty quick for the early to mid 80s. Let's see if we can find one. Right off the bat, there's 2 on eBay. Let's look at those. This one looks sweet. Let's check out this other one here. Whoa, 18 grand. If this is a nice condition, it might be worth that, but that's a little bit too rich for my blood. Let's see if we can find a cheaper one. Here's one, 19 grand. That's a little bit too much for me. Looks pretty nice though. It seems like many SVOs have been really well cared for. I've seen very few of these that are trashed. Here's one right here in Delaware. $6,800, 123,000 miles on it. Now this is more like it. It looks in really good shape. Yeah, right there, I'd say that's a pretty good deal. Do you think these are fair prices? Let me know in the comments below.
From Daihatsu.
Does anyone in the US remember Daihatsu? Anyone? Anyone? No? Okay, well, my friend and Hello Road podcast co-host Paul, he remembers them because he owns a Daihatsu Charade. But anyone else? While they have a long history outside of the US, Daihatsu became primarily known for smaller K cars in Japan. They sold 2 models in the US from 1987 to 1992. You could get either the diminutive Charade or the little SUV called the Rocky. And then they just left the US market without really much fanfare. The Charade is a super cool little car, but I think I'm actually in the market for a Rocky. These things are adorable. It's quite similar to the Suzuki Samurai, sort of like a mini Jeep Wrangler. As the years have passed, I've grown to like these weird looking little trucks. I'd love to find one of these and do some off-roading with it. Okay, let's check Craigslist. Ooh, look at this one, not too far away. 91 Daihatsu Rocky 4x4, 2-tone. Looks pretty nice, it's stick shift because they all were, at least in the US. That one looks pretty rad. All right, so there's one. Oh, look at this, there's another one. This one's in Phoenix, about 5 grand. This one looks like it's been modified slightly. I like the color. I don't really dig the camo on the back, but it's pretty cool. I'd totally rock a car like this. This seems like it would be a fun off-road toy. Here's another one. This one is just under 4 grand, maybe a little bit more rough than the other ones, but you can find Daihatsu Rockies. Surprisingly, I found more of these than I found of Subaru XTs or Nissan Pulsars. How is that possible? Okay, off to the next one.
LANTIS.
All right, so this one was pretty new to me. I hadn't even seen a photo of a Mazda LANTIS until a couple months ago. Isn't this thing rad? It's totally dripping with a 1990s vibe. Apparently the body was designed by ex-Porsche designers. It was also sold as the 323F, Astina, Allegro, and Aries outside of Japan, but it never made it to the States. Many of them had the Mazda B6 engine found in the Miata, but you could also get it with a 2-liter V6 that revs all the way up to 7,800 RPM, one of the smallest V6 engines that has ever made it into a production car. But I think I'd want to try to import a LANTIS Type R, which came with 168 horsepower and a limited slip differential. I'm sure it'd be next to impossible to find a Type R in the United States, but let's see if we can find a base model LANTIS for sale in the US. Okay, so here's a few that have been sold. Looks like they were going to be imported. Okay, this one says under deposit. This is the one that I saw for sale a few months back, and it's what totally got me into this car. It just looks so nice. I really, really like the design of this car. Now this has the 4-cylinder, doesn't have the 2-liter V6, which is fine. Probably ended up being easier to work on because it's the same motor that's found in the Miata, and it's not completely crammed in there. So there you go, it looks like a Miata under the hood, except for the engine's facing the wrong direction. This seems like this car would be easy to find parts for if you imported it to the US. Okay, so I didn't find one for sale in the US, but as you can see here, they have been imported. Ever heard of the Mercury LN7? Well, most people haven't because it was introduced for the 1982 model year and quickly killed in 1983. The LN7 is the lesser-known twin of the Ford EXP, itself a mostly forgotten car, an even more forgotten version of an already forgotten car. The EXP and LN7 were 2-seater, front-wheel drive, sport compact coupes. The LN7 differentiated itself with a bubble-back hatch, but very few LN7s were sold, perhaps because a sports compact car was a bit out of place in a Lincoln Mercury dealership. With only about 70 horsepower, the LN7 is not a quick car, but the strange shape really stands out to me today. It's such a weird and unique looking car that not many appreciated much when it was new, and now they've mostly all disappeared. I'm not even gonna bother searching for this one because I'm pretty sure there is none available. But if you do happen to find one, let me know. I'll probably buy it. Okay, let's find a rad van. I mean, most vans are rad, but let's find a really cool van from the 80s and 90s that I want to buy. My first vehicle was a van, and it's high time that I find myself another one. I've long had a soft spot for GM's Dustbuster minivans, and the pre-facelift Pontiac Transport is my favorite of the bunch. Back in the 1980s, GM needed something to better compete with Chrysler's minivans. Instead of taking the safe route, GM decided to go with a completely futuristic look, with a very long sloped windshield and hidden A and C pillars. The design proved to be a bit too forward-thinking for the buying public, and GM facelifted these things within a couple of years. While I loathe the plastic body cladding that Pontiac slapped on everything back in the 80s and 90s, I actually have a bit of a fondness for it now. It looks pretty good on the Transport. Oh, we should take a look at the concept version of the Pontiac Transport. It's amazing. Obviously, there were issues here that made it difficult, if not impossible, to manufacture, but imagine if GM sold this instead. Would that have changed the course of minivan history? Or the course of Pontiac's history? I'm not sure about that, but maybe. Let's see if we can find a Transport for sale. A lot of tabs open here. Let's see what we can find. Okay, here's one. So this actually isn't exactly what I want because it's got the front end redesign here. So it looks a little bit different. Actually, this one's a little smashed in, but overall, it's very similar to what I'm interested in. Okay, that's $1,500. That's available. Let's see if we can find another one. Not having much luck here. How are there more Daihatsu Rockies than Pontiac Transports for sale? All right, so I need to include at least one Italian offering here. These things get a bad rap. They're often referred to as the worst Ferrari, but I think they're actually quite cool. I'm referring to the Mondial. Die-hard Ferrari enthusiasts may not have much love for the Mondial, but I do. It's unusual, and I'm a huge fan of the 80s Ferrari aesthetic here, especially on the coupe. Louver grills, pop-up quad headlights, and a sleek yet boxy Pininfarina design. Yes, nostalgia might be influencing me a bit here, but I really do love the shape. The Mondial was initially panned as being too slow and not having enough power for a Ferrari, and it was quite a bit more expensive than quicker offerings at the time. But it did serve a purpose. It was more of a practical everyday grand tour, albeit an expensive one. Later Mondials got quicker and handled better, with years of refinement culminating with the Mondial T. Many decades later, the Mondial is usually the least expensive Ferrari you can find. While it got derided for not living up to Ferrari standards at the time, it's not a terrible car, especially by 1989 when they seem to have worked out most of the kinks. Let's see what we can find here. There's gotta be a few of these for sale. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's go here to the 87 Mondial 3.2 Cabriolet. Here it is available in resale red. It's quite nice. I'm not a fan of red Ferraris. That's not my thing. I know a lot of people are. I kind of like the weirder colors, so this car wouldn't be for me. I actually really dig, I mean, the black is really nice. I like the black a lot. And this car right here is 37 grand, but this one right here, this car is the one I'd want. I can't figure out the name of this color, but somebody chime in and let me know. It's basically brown. I love it. Man, this is the Mondial for me right here. There we go, the pop-ups and the louvers. So nice. Now, while this car is pricey for me, I think I'd still kind of classify it as a decent value. A totally rad 1980s Ferrari for 35 grand? Sign me up. Okay, so we need a luxury car for this list. Well, calling this car a luxury car is debatable, but it did have a luxury badge on it.
The Smaller Dream, 1984 Cimarron by Cadillac.
This car often shows up in worst car lists, being touted as a badge engineering disaster. But I think that's being a bit too harsh. Yes, maybe the idea behind the car was a bit of a marketing mistake, but many years later, this little caddy is sort of endearing. Looking back, it's kind of fun to laugh at General Motors a little bit, like they actually thought a low-effort rebadge of a Cavalier would actually sell well as a Cadillac. But really, this is more of a product planning and branding blunder than anything else. The J-body cars like the Cavalier were decently acceptable vehicles for the era, especially for the price at which they were sold. Slapping on some gold trim and Cadillac badges on a basic economy platform and charging thousands more was never gonna work. But it is an interesting piece of automotive history. And because of that, I kinda want one of these in my stable. It's likely I'll be disappointed in the driving experience, but it would be fun to drive something that takes me back to the weird mid-80s decisions of General Motors. Let's see what we can find. I doubt there's any of these, but it's worth a shot. 0, nothing. All right, well, it was worth a shot. Quick search turned up nothing. I'm sure there's a few out there, but I just haven't been able to find them. Okay, let's talk about the Chevrolet Beretta, specifically the Beretta GTZ. The Beretta GTZ might not have been my first choice for a sporty coupe back in 1990, but it certainly was cool looking. The GTZ had quite a few aesthetic upgrades from the base Beretta with this body kit and these body colored wheels. It also had the quad 4 engine, pushing out 180 horsepower and motivating the car to 60 miles per hour in about 7.5 seconds. Pretty quick for the era. It came with a high performance suspension package and it handled pretty well too. In 1991, you could option the GTZ with a 3.1 liter V6, but that was automatic only. So I would definitely opt for the quad 4 car with a 5-speed. And man, this thing just looks totally badass. Let's see if we can find one. What are we gonna come up with? Anything? Anything? I doubt it. Nothing. Okay, Craigslist. Nope. Not finding anything. Oh well, I hope we'll be able to find one of these things one day. All right, last one. Let's focus on a car that was never available in the United States. Let's take a trip to France and take a moment to remember the Citroën BX GTI 16 valve.
Citroën BX soupape, rien ne l'arrête.
The BX is a delightfully strange and boxy family car produced by Citroën from 1982 to 1994. My pulse has sped up just looking at these. I love them so much. But I'm particularly interested in the 16-valve version of the BX GTI that was introduced in 1987. The naturally aspirated 1.9-liter engine made an impressive 158 horsepower, allowing the car to hit 60 miles an hour in just under 8 seconds. And the aesthetic upgrades over the base model are just fire. I love them. Plus, this car has Group B rally heritage. Okay, so the BX never really did that well in Group B rallies, but it's got Group B rally heritage. But man, just a strange and boxy look at this thing has made me start to hyperventilate a little bit. I love it. I just totally love it. Let's see if we can find one for sale. And obviously these were not available in the United States. I've seen maybe 1 or 2 BXs in the US, so it's not likely that I'm gonna find one here, but let's see if we can find one overseas. All right, here's a few. So they range from 5,000 to 8,500 euros. This one looks a little rough, nice black color. This one is in Germany. What about this one right here? Ooh, that red color, that's pretty nice. This thing looks awesome. Wow, that's cool. And this one's in France. Oh, I like that red stripe. That is pretty cool. One more. This is a white one. That looks pretty nice as well. So there's a few out there for sale. I have no idea how it would be to try to import one of these to the United States, but I totally want to do it. Okay, which one of these cars should I try to find and buy for myself? Which one of these cars would you want to add to your stable, if any of them? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you've seen here, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon so you can get notified of all my new videos. I'll have more videos with my collection of 80s and 90s cars, reviews of new and used cars, and road trips to unique locations. And maybe I'll purchase one of the cars from this list. See you later.